Smell. A funny sense, isn't it? I wonder how many of you felt as though you smelt where I was at. Hello, everyone. Today, we are going to go on a little journey to discuss that phenomenon, the magical effect of scent, and how that unconsciously affects behavior and cognition. But before we dive into the topic, we should first discuss why scent is relevant in understanding consumer behavior. Smell is a very important sense. According to the Sense of Smell Institute, an average human being recognizes around 10,000 different smells. What's more, as much as 75% of emotions are generated by smells. This means that we have an incredible memory bank of smells, and that different smells are responsible for our emotions. Since smell can influence our mood, and moods can influence decision-making, smells can also affect our purchases. So how exactly does smell link to memory? To give you more insight into this relationship, here's Professor Antonio Paolini explaining how smells are related to memory.
A smell has the potential to bring on a flood of memories. Chlorine might remind you of swimming pools you visited as a child, or pine of the Christmas trees you decorated during the festive season. But why does smell act as such a powerful memory trigger? The olfactory system is incredibly complex, with at least 1,000 different smell receptor types that regenerate throughout your lifetime and adapt according to what you're used to smelling. The end result is that we are able to discriminate between a vast number of different kinds of smells. Despite this, we find it difficult to describe smells, as our naming system isn't as developed as the other senses. We tend to name smells after the thing that produces it, such as fresh bread or wet dog. Within your brain, the areas responsible for smell and memory are closely related. The olfactory bulb is part of the brain responsible for processing smells. It sits next to the hippocampus, which is a conversion point for information arriving from all over the cortex. Neuroscientists have shown that the hippocampus is crucial for creating new memories. When a person suffers damage to this area, their ability to identify smells becomes impaired. In order to identify a smell, you need to be able to remember where you've smelt it before and connect it with the visual information that occurred at the same time. Other research has shown that studying information in the presence of a smell can actually increase the vividness of the remembered information when you experience the smell again. So, if you're studying while burning essential oils or in a room with this particular smell, your brain will link the information you're taking in with the smells around you.
Research has shown that our sense of smell is the strongest sense in relation to memory. It appears that we are 100 times more likely to remember something we smelt rather than something we saw. Have you ever smelt something suddenly and it brought back memories from years ago? Perhaps the smell of a certain dish from your childhood which you haven't eaten in a long time. This effect is called the Proust effect. This is when memories are elicited through olfaction. MRI analyses have shown that there is significant greater activation in the amygdala and hippocampal regions when recalling a personally significant smell than any other cue. This explains why smells are used by marketers to influence consumers through their memories and emotions. So back to the paper, Smells Like Clean Spirit. Why and how is this paper relevant for understanding consumer behavior? Knowing the power of smell, companies invest a lot of money on odor marketing so that they can create a memorable brand name. Since smell is a deeply rooted sense, the olfactory system functions as a chemical alert system. This is interesting for marketers as smell has a potential to evoke uncensored reactions to marketing stimuli. Thus, people consume out of emotions and instinct, as opposed to rational thinking. Every time a consumer is exposed to a new, specific kind of smell, the new memories and experiences from that store will be connected to that smell. Therefore, when marketers create a specific smell for the store, for example, only this scent is needed to get customers in a positive and familiar mood, which in turn is likely to increase consumption or purchases. This article is important because there's a great deal of research focusing on physiological features of odor perception. However, the influence of scents on cognition has been limited. Presently, a few studies have found effects of scent on approach avoidance tendencies. For example, consumer behavior research suggests that scents increase gambling in casinos, time spent on a decision task, or intentions to visit a store. Some researchers claim that they have observed effects of pheromones on the menstrual cycle and human sexual behavior. These responses are likely to occur as there is a direct link between the olfactory processing modules and parts of the limbic system. Furthermore, the limbic system is known to regulate affect and sexual activity. Processing odors, however, is not limited to the limbic system. There are associations found between odors and other sensory information like taste. Associations may also be formed between odors and other semantic and episodic knowledge. For example, you may immediately associate the smell of pine trees with Christmas, just like what the video mentioned earlier, because when the odor is perceived, such semantic associations may become activated. However, this association of scents could have consequences that go further than simply the activation of associated memories. That is why in this article, the aim of the research is to explore whether the semantic associations that are activated due to odor perception may shape overt behavior even outside of consciousness. This idea is based on research that concerned the direct link between social perception and behavior. The research by Bach and colleagues showed that simply the perception of social categories, like social stereotypes, can semantically activate associated behaviors or traits, which then further guide thinking and doing in that specific situation. A study conducted by Bach, Chen, and Burrows, who primed participants with words related to social categories of elderly, resulted in the participants walking more slowly down a hallway as being slow became more accessible. This reflects the ideomotor principle, that simply the ideation of or perception of behavior is enough to increase the likelihood of adjusting to those behaviors pertaining to that behavioral concept. How then does this article extend our current knowledge? The researchers of this study wanted to test the possibility that scents influence behavior. They used the same mechanisms as those that guide the ideomotor action. They used a citrus scent, which is typical of cleaning products, and expected that a strong semantic association between the clean scent and cleaning behavior would be established. The first two studies tested the hypothesis that exposure to cleaner scent enhances the accessibility of the cleaning concept automatically, so that such exposure would speed up participants' responses to cleaning-related words in a lexical decision task. That's study 1. The second study was about how the exposure to the cleaning scent would guide their expectations of future home activities. In study 3, they examined the effect of cleaner scent on actual cleaning-related behavior. The researchers tried to demonstrate that the influence of the scent on cognition and behavior can happen without the person being consciously aware of the influence. Following previous research, they checked whether participants were aware of the scent, and if they were aware, whether they were also aware of the influence of the scent on their thoughts and actions. Arts, Hendricks, and Holland conducted 3 studies to investigate the effect of scent on behavior and cognition. The first study analyzed if a certain scent increases lexical accessibility with words that are associated with the scent. The second study examined if a scent influences behavioral intentions that are associated with this scent. And the third study checked if participants actually executed behavior that is associated with this scent. In the first study, 50 Dutch students were randomly assigned to either a cubicle with a citrus cleaner scent in the air or to a cubicle without a scent. In the cubicle, the participant had to complete a lexical decision task. A string of letters would appear on a computer screen, and the participant had to indicate if this word exists by pressing a yes or no key. Non-existing words, non-cleaning related words, and cleaning related words like bimba, table, and cleaning were presented. The results of this study showed that participants in the scented condition significantly reacted faster to cleaning words than participants in the control condition. This indicates that the citrus scent enhanced accessibility to the lexical concept of cleaning. Furthermore, the participants were unaware of the citrus scent. The second study had a similar setup as the first study. 56 Dutch students were randomly assigned to either the scent condition or the non-scent condition. Then, they were asked to write down 5 activities that they were planning to do during the rest of the day. The results showed that 36% of participants who smelt citrus wrote down activities associated with cleaning compared to only 11% who did not smell anything. This indicates that the citrus scent influenced future behavioral intentions. Furthermore, the participants were unaware of any citrus scent. In the third study, 22 Dutch students were randomly assigned to the scent or non-scent condition. They completed a filler questionnaire in the cubicle and were then led to a scent-free room and sat at a table where they were instructed to eat a biscuit. The biscuit would produce a lot of crumbs when eaten. A camera filmed the participants' behavior at a table, and raters counted how many participants removed the crumbs from the table. The results showed that on average, participants removed the crumbs significantly more in the scent condition than in the control condition. This indicates that the citrus scent influenced behavior by increasing cleaning-related activities. Furthermore, no participant consciously thought about cleaning while eating the biscuit. To conclude, the studies showed that scent has an unconscious effect on cognition and behavior. Not only does the citrus scent trigger a semantic association with cleaning, but it also increases cleaning behavior. Moreover, this process happens outside of our consciousness. Previous research demonstrated an automatic link between perception of the environment and behavior. Research on olfactory perception focused mainly on affective mechanisms and approach avoidance behavior. However, this research was the first to show that the perception of smell triggers semantic associations, which can in turn influence behavior. These findings have possible implications for consumer behavior. Not only can scent be a positive attribute of a product or put you in a good mood if it's diffused in a store, it could also directly trigger unconscious buying behavior. Offline, brick-and-mortar stores can use olfactory perception to trigger desired semantic associations and behavior to encourage consumption. For example, diffusing citrus scent in a store could help to sell more cleaning supplies, or the smell of cut grass in a DIY store can encourage customers to buy gardening tools. Restaurants, supermarkets, and bakeries could also diffuse delicious scents or place their kitchens near the entrance, so customers and passers-by will be intrigued to enter and buy more food. The olfactory influence is one out of many factors that unconsciously affect consumer behavior and can be used as a means for manipulation. Regarding limitations, this study included a small number of Dutch students and only one type of scent, which questions the generalizability of the results. Also, study 2 and 3 depended on 2 human raters, who occasionally produced different evaluations, which questions the reliability of the data. Furthermore, the citrus smell has a strong semantic association with cleaning, which may not be true for everyone. For example, a French study from 2016 showed that cultural differences affect intensity and semantic associations of certain scents. Therefore, a scent's power to influence behavior may depend on the individual's DNA, culture, age, gender, environment, and their personal memory bank of smells. I hope that you've learned a thing or two about how smells can influence your behavior, and how this can be a powerful tool that marketers use to get you to buy and buy some more unconsciously. As supported by this study, individuals smelt their environment, and it smelt like clean spirit.
Hello and welcome to our presentation. This e-lecture is about ovulation, female competition, and product choice, hormonal influences on consumer behavior. Throughout history and across cultures, women spend a large amount of their resources on products that enhance their physical appearance. These products include makeup, hair products, other cosmetics, and mainly clothes. Today, we will look at how ovulation and the hormonal changes associated with it influence the product choice of women. Previous studies found that women have a higher level of interest in fashion-related items and are willing to spend a larger amount of their income on clothes compared to men. This is regardless of the woman's income or social status. Research also showed that women want to stay up to date with fashion trends, whereas men tend to only buy new clothes when they actually need them. Women are said to buy fashion-related items to enhance their mood and self-esteem, and they go shopping simply to browse around and to pass time. Women's fashion purchases often include impulse buys when they lack the cognitive resources for self-control. In order to understand how ovulation might influence women's consumer behavior, let's take a look at the female ovulatory cycle. On average, the human ovulatory cycle of women spans 28 days. Yet women can only become pregnant approximately 10 to 15% of these days. There are only a few obvious signals that indicate women's fertility. Therefore, women do not know when they are ovulating without specific education. Just before ovulation, there is an increase in the ovarian hormone estrogen and the luteinizing hormone, short LH. These hormones fluctuate together and peak at around the same time within each cycle. If a woman does not become pregnant in this period, the estrogen and LH levels drop significantly. In the past, ovulation was believed to not affect the psychology or behavior of women in a meaningful way. But more recently, the ovulatory shift hypothesis was introduced by psychologists and biologists. This hypothesis poses that natural selection has shaped certain aspects of women's psychology in a way that there is a shift during the brief window of possible conception. These shifts are not conscious or deliberate. They include that women at peak fertility have more pronounced preferences for potential sex partners who show classic biological indicators of male genetic fitness, like symmetry, intelligence, and masculinity. Furthermore, ovulating women are pickier regarding mates in general because poor mating choices during that time have very high consequences. Lastly, according to the ovulatory shift hypothesis, women near ovulation show increased mating interest. They are more motivated to attend social events and to behave in ways that might secure them a desirable mate. But it is important to note that contraception, like the pill, erases these shifts because it disrupts the normal fluctuation of hormones in the menstrual cycle. To give an answer to the question of how hormonal influences have an effect on consumer behavior, the authors created 4 hypotheses based on the previous information. Therefore, 3 studies were conducted, which we are going to present to you now. The participants of these studies were female students from a large university in the United States with regular monthly menstrual cycles and without any form of hormonal contraception. The first hypothesis investigated was, near ovulation, women should be more likely to choose sexier and more revealing clothing and other fashion items rather than items that are less sexy and less revealing. To test this assumption, 60 students accomplished a virtual shopping task, twice, once at high fertility and once at low fertility. Let us show you how the virtual shopping task looked like. From a website which was created for the experiment and looked like a popular retail website, each student could select 10 products. Half of the students were offered 64 items, and the other half had to choose from 128 items, half of which were accessories. 50% of the available products were considered sexy items, and the other half were considered less sexy items. And the results of this study were consistent with hypothesis 1, which means that there was a significant main effect of fertility. Women chose a greater percentage of sexy clothing and accessory items near ovulation, compared to when they were not ovulating. The second hypothesis was, ovulation should lead women to be especially likely to choose sexier products when women are primed to compare themselves to attractive female rivals. Hypothesis 3 was, there should be no differences in product choice between ovulating and non-ovulating women when they are primed with unattractive women or with men. These assumptions were tested with a second study. 48 students completed the same shopping test as in study 1, but in this study, the women were primed with pictures to think about specific types of individuals immediately before the shopping task. These individuals were attractive women, unattractive women, attractive men, and unattractive men. So this group of students also selected 10 products out of the 64 or 128 items which were offered on the website. The results show that women who were primed with attractive women chose significantly more sexy products near ovulation. Hence, according to the findings, there is also support for the second hypothesis. Ovulation leads women to be especially likely to choose sexier products when women are primed to compare themselves with attractive female rivals. The effect of ovulation was especially strong when women were primed with attractive female rivals, but this effect was suppressed when they were primed with unattractive women or with men. One can say that there is also support for the third assumption. There was no difference in product choice between ovulating and non-ovulating women when they were primed with unattractive women or with men. This bar chart shows the percentage of sexier products chosen as a function of fertility and attractiveness of salient rival women and salient men. The vertical axis indicates the percentage of the chosen sexy items, and the horizontal axis compares unattractive and attractive women with unattractive and attractive men, according to the participants' fertility level. In short, the results show that there is a clear difference between the amount of chosen sexy items of highly fertile women primed with attractive women compared to the other experimental conditions. This research also found a main effect of the attractive male prime, as the right bar chart shows. In other words, seeing photographs of attractive men led women to choose significantly more sexy products compared to seeing photographs of less attractive men, regardless of women's fertility status. Hypothesis 4 states, ovulation should lead women to choose sexier products when primed to think about local attractive women who constitute potential direct rivals. However, ovulation should not influence product choice when women are primed to think about women from distant location, because such women do not constitute direct rivals. A third study was carried out to test this assumption. During this study, 161 female students completed the same shopping task as in the second study, but they were primed to think about the following: attractive local women, unattractive local women, attractive distant women, and unattractive distant women. For this setup, the same pictures of attractive women were shown as in the second study. However, they were told that these women live in a university over 1,000 miles away and thus did not appear as potential rivals. Like this, it should be tested if the ovulatory effect only appears if the participants are primed with direct rivals or with attractive women in general. The results of this experiment show that there is a marginally significant three-way interaction with fertility: the location of the women shown and their attractiveness. Resultant: fertile women chose significantly more sexy products when primed with direct rivals, which means attractive and local women. Additionally, Hypothesis 4 is confirmed as ovulation did not influence product choice when women are primed to think about women from distant locations, because such women do not constitute direct rivals. This bar chart shows the percentage of sexier products chosen as a function of fertility and attractiveness of potential rival women and their location. The vertical axis indicates the percentage of the chosen sexy items, and the horizontal axis compares unattractive and attractive distant women with unattractive and attractive local women, according to the participants' fertility level. In short, these results show that there is a clear difference between the amount of chosen sexy items of highly fertile women primed with attractive local women compared to the other experimental conditions. In sum, the 3 conducted studies show that all of the 4 stated hypotheses can be confirmed. The prediction on the basis of the ovulatory shift hypothesis that ovulating women tend to buy sexier products than non-ovulating women is therefore approved, as there are clear differences in the examined women's purchase behaviors. Additionally, the studies identified multiple correlations between priming participants with attractive and unattractive local and distant living women, as well as with attractive and unattractive local and distant living men. These results mark an important step in the investigation of relations between fertility and female consumer behavior, since they indicate the influence of hormones on purchase decisions. When researching consumer behavior, further factors like social role, social learning, and social identity must be considered. The same applies for psychological, economical, cultural, and social factors, as they obviously interact with purchasing preferences. These findings definitely mark an important step towards further research and continuative explorations regarding the influence of hormones on purchasing decisions. For example, hormones like testosterone or cortisol also have a measurable impact, as they lead to certain purchasing decisions depending on their activation level. To illustrate, stress is causing a higher level of cortisol, which conversely should shift consumer behavior towards products which convey a feeling of security. Psychological impacts like feeling complacent during the fertility phase is just one example of further correlations between fertility and women's consumer behavior, which could be explored in future research. Last but not least, we want to take a look at the importance of hormonal influences on female purchasing decisions in the field of consumer behavior. Due to changes in the hormone levels during the ovulatory cycle, women are subconsciously influenced in their purchasing decisions. Depending on this, women develop temporary product preferences and buying patterns. These findings are especially relevant for marketing strategies, as well as for the presentation of the affected products in stores. Thank you for your attention.
Hello guys, I'm Evie, and together with Xenia and Haris, we're gonna present on hormonal influences on consumer behavior. So our presenting paper was Ovulation, Female Competition, and Product Choice, Hormonal Influences on Consumer Behavior by Durante and others. To present this paper, we're gonna go through an introduction. We're going to explain the methods and results of all 3 studies. We're going to go through the discussion and then end with a take-home message. Across cultures and throughout history, women spend a large portion of their money to appearance-enhancing products. Factors that can influence this phenomenon vary. 2 examples are age and socioeconomic status. Considering age, young women tend to shop more than older women on average, and socioeconomic status, women with high status tend to shop more than women with low status. But what is the role of hormones in this kind of behavior? Despite the growing literature on women's consumer behavior, no research has examined whether women's consumption might be influenced by hormones. So in this paper, the researchers decided to investigate ovulation and the hypothesized effect it has on the before-mentioned phenomenon. So, to clarify, The ovulatory cycle spans 28 days. Out of those days, ovulation occurs around day 14, as you may see, the time women can become pregnant. Most women do not know when they're ovulating. There are no clear signs. There are hormonal changes linked to the cycle, so before ovulation, women experience an increase in estrogen and luteinizing hormone, which are crucial for the determination of ovulation. The ovulatory shift hypothesis claims that women at peak fertility should have more pronounced preferences for potential sex partners, who show classic biological indicators of male genetic fitness. Also, women may show higher mating interests and could be more motivated to behave in ways that would help secure a desirable mate. Literature aligns with this hypothesis. So, in various experiments, it has been shown, for example, that ovulation makes women more likely to cheat. Or other studies found that ovulating women sketched an outfit to wear to a party that was sexier and more revealing. Now, the researchers asked the question, would ovulating women actually make different choices compared to women who are not ovulating? According to this hypothesis, they probably would. The authors employed 3 studies in order to get insight on consumer behavior during ovulation. In the first study, they attempted to see the relationship between ovulation and preference for sexy appearance-enhancing items. The second study tried to see what happens to the behavior when the subjects were primed to think about attractive and unattractive rivals of the same sex. And in the third study, the same experimental idea was employed with the difference that now subjects were primed to think of either indirect, so distant, or direct, meaning local, attractive same-sex rivals. Going on to the first study, the behavior of each subject was measured twice. The difference between the 2 measurements was that in the one, the subject had low fertility and the other high. The level of fertility was assessed by LH urine test, which is the hormone we mentioned previously. The task was a simple choice of clothing items. Participants chose 10 items from a total of either 64 or 128 products, whereby half of the products were pre-tested to be sexy, and the other matched products were pre-tested to be less sexy. For an additional check on the sexual competition theory, a smaller sample followed the same shopping task and later answered questions indicating how much they thought or compared themselves to other women. Finally, the difference in costume or behavior between groups were measured. So to be clear, the hypothesis for the first study was that near ovulation, women would be more likely to choose sexier, more revealing clothing and other fashion items rather than items that are less revealing and sexy. And the hypothesis was confirmed. But we will come back to that later to compare those results with the results of the second study. On the right, you can see an example of the items from which the subjects had to choose from, and it can be easily seen which of these items are considered sexier than others. For the second study, participants completed the same shopping task as in the first study, but the participants were primed this time, divided in 4 different conditions. Women were primed to think about either attractive women, unattractive women, attractive men, or unattractive men. The way that participants were primed was with the photo priming task. Before the shopping task, participants viewed and rated a series of photographs according to their condition. Measurement in consumer behavior between groups showed that the ovulatory effect on product choice was highest when women were primed to think about attractive rivals of the same sex, whilst the effect was minimized in the other conditions. So more specifically, the 2 hypotheses of the second study were that ovulation should lead women to be especially likely to choose sexier products when women are primed to compare themselves to attractive female rivals. And the second hypothesis of the study was that there should be no differences in product choice between ovulating and non-ovulating women when women are primed with unattractive women or men. So to your right, you'll see that the attractive women primed group in the high fertility group had the highest percentage of sexy items chosen compared to the unattractive women primed group, regardless of fertility. Considering subjects that were primed to think about attractive or unattractive men, women chose significantly more appearance-enhancing products when primed with attractive rather than unattractive men. However, women chose products to enhance their appearance regardless of whether they were ovulating. These answers might be explained through social psychology theories, but we will elaborate on that in the limitations subsection of the discussion. So, compared to the first study, the second study showed how the ovulatory effect can be enhanced when women are primed to think of high same-sex sexual competition. This slide has been composed from the results of study 1 and 2. It shows that the difference between the two conditions was only 10% on the first study. Although statistically significant, the 10% difference is a small one. For example, if one group chose a dress that was rated 7 in attraction, the other one chose a dress rated 8. That's a rather small marginal difference. This was the motivation for the second study. The authors tried to boost up the difference by priming the subjects with photos of attractive female rivals. As a result, the difference between the two conditions increased to 25%. This slide summarizes the general concept and results of the study as well as the motivation of the authors. So going to the third study, women completed the same shopping task as in study 2. However, participants were assigned in two conditions, the direct rivalry condition and the indirect rivalry condition. Priming was done with the same photo priming task as in study 2. More specifically, the participants were assigned to 4 different groups, depending on their priming situation. The first group, which was the direct rivals condition, participants were told that the women in the photographs were from the same university, so they were primed to think of attractive local women. Participants on the second group were primed to think about unattractive local women. Participants in the third group were assigned in the indirect rival condition, meaning that they were told that the women in the photographs were from a university located over 1,000 miles from the participant's school. And finally, in the fourth group, participants were primed to think of unattractive, distant women. Consumer behavior was measured in the same way as in previous studies. So the hypothesis of the third study was ovulation should lead women to choose sexier products when primed to think about local attractive women who constitute potential direct rivals. However, ovulation should not influence product choice when women are primed to think about women from distant locations because such women do not constitute direct rivals. And as seen in the graph, the percentages of sexy items between distant attractive and unattractive women is unrelated to the subject's fertility rates, high or low. This means that a part of the hypothesis is confirmed. In the next slide, we will dive into the difference between attractive and unattractive direct rivals. In this graph, the difference between unattractive and attractive local rivals is visible in high and low fertility rates. This confirms the hypothesis, which means that the attractiveness and location of the rivals are crucial determining factors of the percentage of sexy items high fertility women choose. Consistent with predictions, women at peak fertility choose sexier and more revealing clothing, shoes, and fashion accessories. Study 2 and 3 attempted to provide insight on the mechanism behind the ovulatory effect, meaning to provide an answer in questions such as, can the ovulatory effect be enhanced or suppressed? Do women dress to impress at ovulation and attract directly desirable men, or to outdo the same-sex sexual competition? It was found that explicit same-sex priming led to enhancement of the effect, where explicit opposite sex priming had no effect. Findings suggest that the ovulatory effect can be both enhanced and suppressed. So on the one hand, the effect of ovulation on consumer choices appeared to be enhanced when the danger of direct same-sex sexual competition is salient, and on the other hand, the effect is suppressed when the salience of attractive or unattractive men did not produce an effect of ovulation on choices of clothing or fashion accessories. Regarding limitations, the present study did not take into account social factors that can be included in the mechanism behind such a distinct consumer behavior. For instance, social learning, social role, or social identity theories could explain such a behavior, as they suggest that priming women with photos of other attractive women, or even men, would make the female social role or identity more salient. Another limitation of the study was that even though the effect was found, the difference was not that extreme, as women on ovulation tend to select sexier clothes in a less than 10% difference. Future work might also examine possible psychological mediators underlying women's behavior changes around ovulation. There are multiple possibilities that would be highly consistent with the theoretical perspective. For example, ovulating women might feel more comfortable with their bodies, or another possibility can be that ovulating women might feel more competitive in general, and of course, there can be much more directions to look at. This research regarding the biological factors that affect women's tendencies is undeniably very interesting to discuss and investigate. However, there is a responsibility in researching these effects, knowing that these results may not always be used in ethical ways. Apps that assist to regulating your menstruation are called menstru apps. Some of you may already have used it in the past or may be using them now. These apps are rated as fourth most popular among adults and second most popular among adolescent women in the health apps category. To say it clear, these apps are widely known and used. What is not widely known is that the investigations in data protection have shown that at least 2/3 of these apps share users' insensitive data with big data companies such as Facebook. Women's menstrual cycle is being monetized. Imagine getting clothing advertisements on Facebook according to your menstrual cycle. This is not a dystopian scenario, but rather a realistic one. Does the advantage of being aware of these processes and informing women of their tendencies outweigh the disadvantage of manipulating these processes for the revenue of companies? These ethical concerns are important to consider. To conclude the presentation, we would like to repeat this brief statement that summarizes the highlights and results of the paper very briefly and clear. While ovulation occurs, women tend to shop sexier clothing items. This ovulation effect is linked to same-sex sexual competition since it is suppressed when the salience of attractive rivals is minimized and enhanced when the salience of attractive rivals is maximized. Thank you for your attention, and we wish you a nice day.